Rich, welcome back to the show.
Yes, good to be here.
It's great to have you. So for people who don't know, Rich Maltzman is a professional project manager and an academic, what he calls a pracademic, an academic with real experience, teaching at Boston University, has seen several cohorts of great project managers come through. So it's great to have you back, Rich.
Yeah, good to be here.
And I'm looking forward to hearing, first of all, your three top project management tips for project managers to learn from.
Okay, well, the first one is pretty classic, but very practical, and that is break the work down, get the work into manageable chunks. If you are told that tomorrow you're launching a space shuttle, it's kind of hard to know where to start. So break the work down into manageable chunks.
Yep.
Fancy word is decomposition. Understand where the work is, understand the scope before you do anything. In fact, there's a subtext to this, which is first get a grasp of what's in and not in the project.
Yeah.
And then, and only then, can you start to figure out the scheduling and the sequencing of that. Some people jump right to sequencing, right? Okay, we got to do this, get that, right? And then, and only then, if it's a budgeted project that has a lot of cash flow and so forth, that's only then can you really have a handle on the spending and the scheduling of spending money. But that's a little bit too much detail. To me, start with what's in this project and what are the major streams of work that we have to do. And I know that's very classic PMI, but it's real. And, I come from 40 years of telecom experience, and my best project managers, I was a supervisor, were the ones that got that realized if I make bite-sized pieces of work that I can control and understand, I can reassemble that.
Yeah.
But first step is breaking it down.
Yeah. And of course, that's good advice, not just for big projects where you've got thousands of tasks, even for small things that you've got on your plate domestically.
Yeah.
When you feel like I'm not sure how to proceed, breaking it down into small bite-sized chunks just frees you up in terms of that kind of procrastination. I don't know where to get going. So that's fantastic advice.
And it brings into play the human element of this. We are human beings. We have our limitations and we can be overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And when you're overwhelmed, you get into this analysis paralysis and nothing happens.
Yeah.
So you relieve yourself of that aspect of things when you break the work down and you say, I can, and you also get little mini rewards because you have something that can be accomplished and celebrated. So break the work down. Number one.
Okay. And what about number two?
Three. So the next one is to, and this is very real, have a technical deputy. As a project manager who may not, especially in today's fast-moving technical world, you may not have all the knowledge. So there's actually two sides of this coin. One is if you are a technical expert, and this may come up later in the conversation, let it go, right? Yeah. Remember the song Frozen? Let it go, let it go. So let that go, because you'll be tempted to continue to take on the technical role. Many project managers take on the technical role, like myself, after 10 years of engineering, got tapped on the shoulder and said, hey, want to lead a group of project managers and get a promotion? Okay, I'll do that. So if that's one side of the coin, let it go. The other side is you might have come to the field from a non-technical background and suddenly you've been thrown a technical project. The key word here is conversancy. Become conversant in the technology. It doesn't mean you have to know it all. In fact, it's, as I mentioned, it can be counterproductive to become the technical expert. But one of my most effective and efficient project managers had her degree in medieval history. And yet she was overseeing optical network deployments in our telecom company. And she was massively successful because she knew how to speak with people from Bell Laboratories. She knew when she was being snowed, and that happens. Snowed is an expression for being overwhelmed with technical jargon and so forth. She always had a lieutenant at her side, a deputy, who knew the stuff, knew the language, and could give her credibility with the technical team. So get yourself a technical deputy. If you are already a technical expert, let that part go.
That's second example, and your colleague who wasn't a technical expert at all. That's also a great example of how consultants need to learn to behave. I spent my project management career as a consultant, and so I was never a technical expert in the projects I was delivering. And that skill of conversancy, which is a lovely word that I've not heard applied to that scenario, but that skill of conversancy is one of the deep skills for consultants and project managers going into consulting environments.
Another aspect of this is and this is the human aspect, if you're a non-technical person, you still need to respect the technical portion. And I remember one particular incident where a hardware engineer was one of my project managers. And she was talking with a hardware manager, a software, so she's a hardware manager. She's talking to a software engineer about the work that they had to do. And she said, you just have to finish this little, you just have to write this little code. Little, I mean, literally little demeans, right? The work. And so that person became a little bit antagonistic to the project.
Yeah.
I had to take her aside and say, you need to, nothing's little in the mind of the people who are working on that task.
Yeah.
Which actually segues into the third tip.
Go on in.
Which is take on a servant leadership role. And I know this has become really popular now in the world of the agile mindset and so forth, and it should be. This idea of becoming a servant leader is something that I've been coaching project managers to do when I first took on a PM supervisory role. That you are a roadblock remover. You are an obstacle pusher out of the wayer. That is your job. And if you don't like that, you should go back into a technical field or some other functional area. You aren't always going to be a superhero with a cape flying through the air and bringing solutions to everyone. You are letting other people solve problems. And for example, if programmers can't do their work because the server's too slow, you get them a new server. You're not actually solving the problem. You're not actually, writing the code for them. Again, it goes back to this technical versus support role. So become a servant leader. Now there's a name for it. I mean, all along in my career, 30, 40 years ago, I was talking about servant leadership without knowing that that was the name of it.
Now, after that, I'm really keen to hear how you've managed to select two favorite tools from a career of delivering projects, of leading a PMO, and of teaching project management. What are your two favorite tools to use on projects?
Well, I'm going to start with one that comes from my more recent backgrounds, 10, 15 years in sustainability and project management. Dave Shirley and I wrote a book called Green Project Management about 12 years ago. And it won the Cleveland Award for literature, which surprised us.
Congratulations.
But in that book, we talked about the role of project managers in thinking long-term, and it fell on sort of deaf ears. And we wrote a follow-up book that was aimed at the program and portfolio management folks, because project managers were basically saying, Dave and Rich, get out of here. We have scope, cost, and time. We don't need any other constraints. You're telling us to think about 5 years from now, get out of here. So we realized the audience for that book should be program managers, sophisticated project managers, program managers, and actually operational managers, business leaders.
It's a portfolio tier thing, really, isn't it?
Yeah. So we wrote a follow-up book to that. And in that book, we had a tool called a Sustainability Radar. And it basically is a 6-element guide to the aspects of sustainability, and you can measure how well your project or set of projects is yielding longer term success, or at least has the capability to yield long-term success. And we ended up, it was kind of cool, we ended up with different signatures. So if you think about a radar chart, you get the different patterns. And we had a whole bunch of different patterns that indicated that you were, for example, a greenwasher or a laggard, or on the other side, you were leaders and so forth. And it hasn't been that well deployed, but I really think it's a good tool. So I have to push that one.
We'll put an image up on screen, and hopefully some people will watch this and think, I need to read that book and think about deploying that tool, because I think...
And you'll find out what an efficient bamboozler is.
But the principle of being able to see in an instant how you are doing against something that matters to you is a phenomenally important principle, and what should be mattering to us more in the world today than the future of the planet.
Yeah, that actually goes to another tool. It's you asked for two. I'm now going to give you three or maybe even four. So when you think about the idea of taking or visualizing data, which is really what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's this concept of it. And this is a little academic, but it really isn't. It's really what project managers do. It's DIKW. I'm sure you've heard of it. So you take data, which is disparate little bits of information, and kind of coagulate that into information that makes some sense. And then you get that into a form that's really understandable, that's knowledge, and then it becomes wisdom, DIKW, right?
Absolutely.
That's really what project managers, when it comes to the communications part of project management, that's what we do.
Yeah.
And that's really what business analytics is. And I co-teach with several folks in our applied business analytics program. And there's a lot of interaction. So the sustainability radar is really one of those advancers that brings things from data to information to knowledge and to actionable to wisdom. I could talk for an hour about that. Thankfully, I will not. So another tool, relatively new, and that's Perflow. It's a software, PERFLO. I'll provide a link. I don't know that much about it. I'm just really intrigued by the idea. And as we talked about with visualizing information, I'm really impressed with how this tool visualizes some real soft information. So Perflow is a tool that looks at the team's health. It's kind of a health check on the communications and mental health of the team without being goofy, right? Yeah. It's a way to check on the team's performance and communications aspects of the project, which if you read the 7th edition PMBOK guide or just project management wisdom in general, a lot of what people are saying is that the soft skills, the leadership skills, the communications piece is what employers are looking for. So this gives you a tool to use as a soft skills manager. So I'm intrigued by it. As I said, I'm not that familiar with it. I don't own any of the company, or there's no endorsement here other than I'm really kind of excited that someone is taking the time to put software behind and analytics behind the idea of the team's communication and health.
I'll put a link down below so people can go investigate it for themselves. That's great. That's fantastic. And actually, it's a nice balance. You've got one which is really a thinking tool and a strategic tool, and one which is really a very practical software tool, which can work at the strategic level, but fundamentally, it's about getting things done in a way that works. That's a nice combination. Exactly.
Thanks.
Right. So, last thing, always interested to hear, what's the one thing that really changed? Maybe your attitude to project management, maybe your understanding of it, maybe the way you practice it, maybe even made a big difference to your career. What's that one thing that's been really influential for you, Rich?
It has to be the conversation that I had with Dave Shirley about, what happens after a project, and should we be thinking about that? And hey, let's look at the idea of we didn't really think of it as green at the time. We just thought about it as long term.
Yeah.
So when I'd say the moment and the career changing element here was when we wrote Green Project Management, and then since then I've been talking about it and presenting all over the world about it, and now it's actually basically a course at we see behind me Boston University. It's actually one of the courses we teach is called Project Value Strategies.
Yeah.
But it's really about holistically looking at your project, bringing some of the stuff that might happen 5, 10, 20 years from now. You're not responsible for that. You're not going to be on the project for 20 years.
Yeah.
But shouldn't you be thinking about what happens socially, economically, and ecologically, and bringing those ideas back into risk identification, stakeholder engagement, and so forth?
Yeah.
And so you can tell I'm talking about it with a little bit of oomph, and I have been for a long time. And so that's 12 years old. That's almost a teenager.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's an idea whose time must surely have come, because if we think about it, somewhere between, well, I was first talking with clients about whole life costing of projects, but we weren't thinking about the cost to the environment. We weren't thinking about, the whole triple bottom line. We were just talking about the physical cash costs. So that was 25 years ago. And then 12 years ago, halfway to now, you started articulating these ideas. And what have we found in the last year? We've seen a massive increase in the focus of the project management community on the idea of value. At long last, the concept of value and benefits delivery has really properly made its way from the program management community to the project management community.
Exactly.
And so by tying together the ideas of project value, which is very current, to whole life costing, which has been around for a long time, and bringing in the fact that these are really all about sustainability and, the planet. It's brilliant.
So when I see a chapter in the PMBOK guide that has this title,
absolutely,
it makes me very happy. Because you just mentioned the three real words are value, benefits, and delivery. Project managers are all about delivery, and that's fine. Project managers are get-or-done people, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's what we should be doing. We're all about, okay, when does this house, when's the open house? Okay, we have to frame the house. We have to do the wiring and the plumbing. Got it, understand. But don't you want the house to last 5 weeks, before it collapses in on itself, right? It's not just about building the house. It's about making the family that's moving in there a happy family that's going to live there and be able to stay there for as long as they want and not have any things falling down on them. So this idea of benefits, realization, and delivering value and holistic view of a project is very exciting to me still, and so that's why I picked that as the one moment that changed everything. And we just couldn't wait to get that book written and out. And that's when I needed my co-author to become my project manager, because I kept saying, wait, I got another idea. Finally, he said, Rich, this book will never come out if you keep adding to it. So once again, go back to my first tip, decomposition, break the work down, know what's in and not in the project. And, take the authors out back and shoot them eventually if they don't actually release the book to the publisher.
And there's always a follow-up book, which in your case is absolutely true. That is such a great tip such a great insight to end with. And I think it's inspirational, particularly for the younger generation of project managers who are going to have to live with the consequences of their project for 40, 50, 60, 70 years. Some of us, we're thinking about our children and our grandchildren inheriting our projects, but for other people, it's real.
And I wanted to say, when you mentioned you're, working 12 years ago on costing, there is absolutely nothing wrong and everything right with having projects that are economically feasible and economically sustainable. There's nothing wrong with making money. And this is not about stopping people from making money and being productive and so forth. It's just that you need to think a little bit broader and think about everything.
Well, that's a fantastic way to end. So, Rich Maltzman, before I say thank you, how can people get in touch with you if they want to engage with you? We'll obviously put links to the books that you've mentioned and some of your other books down below, but how can people get in touch with you?
I'd say LinkedIn is the best way. I've been an aggressive or assertive, whatever the right word is, networker. I really like to connect with people. I'm over 7,000 connections now, which may be big to some, small to others. I really enjoy building that network. So I would say just use LinkedIn, reach out to me there, and I will inevitably follow through eventually.
Rich Maltzman, thank you very much.
Thank you. Good luck with everything.